After discovering that my daughter-in-law was stealing from my account, I pretended to have Alzheimer's for 6 months. She celebrated, "Now I can do whatever I want with the crazy old woman." On the day she brought papers for me to sign over the mansion, I said, "Did you see the cameras? Listen to my story until the end and comment which city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Margaret Elizabeth Thornton, and I am 78 years old." Everything started on a Tuesday morning in late September when I noticed something peculiar about my bank statement that would eventually lead me down a path of deception, betrayal, and ultimately, justice. I had always been meticulous about my finances. After losing my beloved husband Harold 3 years ago, managing our substantial estate became my responsibility alone. Harold had been a successful businessman, and we had accumulated considerable wealth over our 45 years of marriage. Our mansion, nestled on 12 acres of pristine land, was worth several $1,000,000, not to mention the various investment accounts and trust funds we had established over the decades. That particular morning, as I sat in my study reviewing the monthly statements, I discovered a series of unauthorized withdrawals from my primary checking account. At first, I thought it might be a clerical error. The amounts weren't enormous, 500 here, 1,000 there, but they were consistent and had been occurring for several months. My heart began to race as I realized someone had been systematically stealing from me. The only person who had access to my financial information besides myself and my longtime attorney, Mr. Richardson, was my daughter-in-law, Patricia. She had moved into the mansion with my son David after Harold's passing, ostensibly to help care for me and maintain the property. At the time, I had welcomed their presence, grateful not to be alone in the vast house that held so many memories. Patricia was a woman in her early 40s with perfectly styled blonde hair and an obsession with designer clothing and expensive jewelry. She had married my son 15 years ago, and from the beginning, I had sensed something calculating about her nature. She was always particularly interested in our family's wealth and would often make comments about inheritance and estate planning that made me uncomfortable. David, my only child, seemed blissfully unaware of his wife's mercenary tendencies, viewing her expensive tastes as simply wanting the finer things in life. As I stared at the bank statements, my hands trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief, I realized that confronting Patricia directly would likely result in denial and might prompt her to become more careful about covering her tracks. I needed proof, solid evidence that would stand up in court. That's when I conceived a plan that would require me to become an actress of sorts. I would pretend to develop Alzheimer's disease. The decision wasn't made lightly. I understood the implications of what I was about to undertake. For the next several months, I would have to convincingly portray a woman losing her mental faculties while secretly maintaining complete awareness of everything happening around me. It would be emotionally exhausting and potentially dangerous, but I saw no other way to catch Patricia in the act and protect my estate from further theft. I began my performance gradually. During dinner conversations, I would occasionally pause mid-sentence, appearing confused about what I had been saying. I started forgetting names of acquaintances and mixing up appointments. I would wander into rooms and act bewildered about why I was there. The key was to make these episodes seem random and progressive, mimicking the early stages of dementia that I had researched extensively online and through medical journals. David noticed the changes first, and I could see the worry etched on his face during our evening talks. My son had always been a gentle soul, taking after his father in temperament. He worked as an architect and had a genuine caring nature that made him vulnerable to manipulation. When he expressed concern about my apparent memory lapses, I would dismiss them casually, claiming I was simply tired or stressed. Patricia's reaction was entirely different. I observed her carefully during my episodes, and what I saw chilled me to the bone. Rather than showing concern or compassion, she would exchange meaningful glances with David when she thought I wasn't looking. There was something almost predatory in her expression, as if she were calculating how my condition might benefit her. Within 3 weeks of beginning my charade, I overheard Patricia on the phone with someone, though I couldn't determine who was on the other end of the conversation. She was in the kitchen, and I had positioned myself in the adjacent pantry where I could listen without being seen. "It's happening faster than I expected," she said in hushed tones. "She's definitely showing signs of dementia. Yesterday she couldn't remember where she put her reading glasses, and this morning she called me by her sister's name. I think we need to start preparing the paperwork sooner rather than later. My blood ran cold as I heard those words. Patricia wasn't just stealing small amounts from my checking account. She was planning something much more substantial. The paperwork she referenced could only mean one thing. She was preparing to have me declared incompetent so she could gain control of my entire estate. I intensified my performance over the following weeks. I began leaving the stove on accidentally and would act confused when David pointed it out. I started wearing mismatched clothing and would forget the names of longtime household staff members. Mrs. Henderson, our housekeeper, who had worked for us for over 20 years, was particularly troubled by my apparent decline. She would look at me with such sadness in her eyes that I almost broke character several times to reassure her. The hardest part of maintaining the deception was watching how it affected David. My son would spend hours talking to me about memories from his childhood, desperately trying to help me remember details about our family history. He arranged for me to see Dr. Morrison, our family physician, who ran a battery of tests to rule out other causes for my apparent cognitive decline. I had to be extremely careful during these medical examinations, providing just enough inconsistent responses to support the dementia diagnosis without being obviously deceptive. Dr. Hayes Morrison, a man in his 60s who had been our family doctor for over 2 decades, was genuinely concerned about my condition. He prescribed medication that I secretly disposed of and recommended that we consider hiring a full-time caregiver. Patricia was quick to volunteer for this role, insisting that she could provide better care than any stranger we might hire. "I think it's best if I manage all of Mother's affairs from now on," Patricia told David one evening at dinner. I was pretending to struggle with using my silverware properly, occasionally eating with my hands in a way that would embarrass the dignified woman I had always been. "She's becoming increasingly forgetful about financial matters, and we don't want her to make any mistakes that could jeopardize the estate." David agreed reluctantly, clearly torn between wanting to protect me and respecting what he believed was his wife's selfless dedication to my care. That night, I heard them arguing in their bedroom, which was located directly above my study. David was expressing doubts about Patricia taking control of my finances so quickly, while she insisted it was necessary for my own protection. "Your mother could accidentally write checks to scammers or make poor investment decisions," Patricia argued. "We have a responsibility to safeguard her assets, not just for her sake, but for our future security as well." Her words confirmed my worst suspicions. Patricia wasn't just thinking about protecting my assets, she was already considering them as part of her inheritance. I realized that my plan needed to accelerate before she could gain legal control over my finances. The next morning, I intentionally left my jewelry box open with several valuable pieces scattered around my dresser. When Patricia came to check on me, I watched through my bedroom mirror as her eyes lit up at the sight of my diamond tennis bracelet and pearl necklace lying carelessly among my cosmetics. "Oh, Mother Margaret," she said with feigned concern, "you really shouldn't leave your jewelry out like this. Someone might steal it." The irony of her statement was almost unbearable, but I maintained my confused expression and nodded absently. "I was looking for my wedding ring," I mumbled. "Harold gave it to me, you know. Or was it someone else?" Patricia quickly gathered up the jewelry, claiming she would put it in a safe place for me. I knew I would never see those pieces again unless I could prove her theft. That afternoon, I secretly installed a small recording device in my jewelry box, one of several surveillance measures I had begun implementing throughout the house. As weeks passed, Patricia grew bolder in her theft and more careless about hiding her true nature. She began inviting friends over for elaborate lunches, serving expensive wine from Harold's collection, and using our finest china as if she were already the lady of the house. I would shuffle past these gatherings in my bathrobe and slippers, playing the role of the confused elderly woman while listening to Patricia's conversations. During one such lunch, I overheard her talking to a woman named Veronica, whom I recognized as the wife of a local businessman. Patricia was describing my condition in exaggerated terms, painting herself as a martyr, sacrificing her own happiness to care for her difficult mother-in-law. "The poor dear doesn't even recognize me half the time," Patricia said dramatically. "Yesterday she thought I was a burglar and called the police. It's becoming quite dangerous having her here, but David refuses to consider a nursing home. I'm at my wit's end, trying to manage her care while also handling all the financial responsibilities." Veronica made sympathetic noises while admiring the expensive remodeling Patricia had been doing throughout the house without my knowledge. I discovered she had been using my credit cards to pay for new furniture, artwork, and landscaping, all under the guise of making necessary improvements to accommodate my supposed condition. The breaking point came during the 4th month of my charade. I was pretending to nap in the living room when Patricia received a phone call that she answered without realizing I was present. The conversation revealed the full scope of her plans and introduced me to another key player in her scheme. "Everything is proceeding perfectly, Marcus," she said quietly into her phone. "The old woman is completely out of it now. She doesn't even know what day it is most of the time. I've been gradually transferring smaller amounts to establish a pattern, just like you suggested." Marcus turned out to be Marcus Caldwell, a disbarred attorney who had been working with Patricia to develop legal documents that would transfer my assets to her control. Through careful eavesdropping over the following weeks, I learned that Patricia had been planning this scheme long before showing any signs of my supposed dementia. She had been researching legal methods for gaining control of an elderly person's estate and had connected with Marcus through mutual acquaintances in what I could only describe as a network of people who preyed on vulnerable seniors. The most disturbing revelation came when I overheard Patricia talking to Marcus about accelerating their timeline. Apparently, there was some concern that David might become suspicious or that Dr. Morrison might recommend a specialist who could expose the fact that I wasn't actually suffering from dementia. "We need to get the power of attorney documents signed within the next 2 weeks, Marcus told her during one phone conversation I managed to record. "Once we have legal control, we can move forward with the property transfer and liquidate the investment accounts. The longer we wait, the higher the risk of complications." Patricia agreed, and they scheduled a meeting for the following Friday when David would be out of town on a business trip. The plan was for Marcus to bring forged medical documentation supporting my incompetency declaration, along with legal papers transferring ownership of the mansion and primary financial accounts to Patricia as my legal guardian. That night, I barely slept as I contemplated the magnitude of what I had uncovered. Patricia wasn't just stealing money. She was orchestrating a comprehensive theft of my entire estate with the help of a criminal attorney. The amount of money involved was staggering. The mansion alone was worth over $4 million, and my investment portfolios totaled another $6 million. She was attempting to steal my life's work and my son's inheritance through an elaborate fraud scheme. I spent the next several days preparing for what I knew would be the culmination of my 6-month performance. I contacted my legitimate attorney, Mr. Richardson, using a neighbor's phone to avoid leaving any trace of the call on my house phone records. I explained the situation to him in detail and arranged for him to be available with law enforcement if needed. I also reached out to my old friend, Detective Sarah Williams, who had handled some minor theft issues for us in the past when Harold was alive. Sarah had since been promoted to head the white-collar crime division, making her perfect for dealing with Patricia's financial fraud. I provided her with copies of all the evidence I had gathered, including bank statements showing the unauthorized withdrawals, recordings of Patricia's phone conversations, and documentation of the stolen jewelry and credit card fraud. The day of the planned document signing arrived with an overcast sky that seemed to match my mood. David had left for his business trip that morning, kissing my forehead and reminding Patricia to take good care of me. I spent the day maintaining my usual confused demeanor while internally preparing for what would essentially be a final performance. Patricia seemed more nervous than usual, checking her appearance in mirrors throughout the house and making multiple phone calls to coordinate the day's events. She had arranged for Mrs. Henderson to have the day off, ensuring that we would be alone when Marcus arrived with the fraudulent paperwork. At precisely 2 o'clock, Marcus Caldwell knocked on our front door. He was a thin man in his 50s with graying hair and an expensive suit that couldn't disguise his shifty demeanor. He carried a leather briefcase and wore the practiced smile of someone accustomed to deceiving people. Patricia led him into Harold's study, the same room where I had discovered her initial theft months earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me as I shuffled into the room wearing a faded house dress and slippers, portraying the confused elderly woman they believed me to be. "Mrs. Thornton," Marcus said in an overly loud voice, as if I were deaf as well as demented. "I'm here to help you with some important paperwork that will make sure you're properly taken care of." I nodded vacantly and allowed Patricia to guide me to the chair where Harold used to conduct his business. As Marcus spread documents across the desk, I could see that he had brought extensive paperwork including power of attorney forms, property transfer deeds, and what appeared to be guardianship documentation. Now, Mrs. Thornton, Marcus continued, these papers will ensure that Patricia can handle all your finances and make important decisions about your care. You trust Patricia, don't you? I looked up at Patricia with what I hoped appeared to be confusion mixed with trust. Patricia takes good care of me, I mumbled. She gives me my medicine and helps me remember things. Patricia beamed with false affection and patted my hand condescendingly. That's right, Mother Margaret. I just want what's best for you. These papers will make sure you never have to worry about money or legal matters again. As Marcus began explaining each document, I listened carefully while maintaining my vacant expression. The paperwork was even more comprehensive than I had expected. In addition to giving Patricia complete control over my finances, the documents would transfer ownership of the mansion to her immediately, supposedly to protect the asset from potential future medical expenses. The most egregious document was one that would have committed me to a memory care facility within 6 months, with Patricia having sole authority to make that decision. I realized that her plan had never been to care for me long-term. She intended to warehouse me in an institution while she enjoyed my stolen wealth. This is a lot of papers, I said in a shaky voice. Maybe David should look at them first? Patricia and Marcus exchanged quick glances before Patricia knelt beside my chair and took my hands in hers. Oh, Mother Margaret, David is so busy with work, and these papers are really just formalities. You know I only want what's best for you. Doctor, Morrison said it's important to get these legal matters settled quickly because of your condition. The mention of Dr. Morrison was another lie. I knew she had never discussed any such recommendation with him, but I nodded slowly and picked up the pen Marcus offered me. Where do I sign? I asked, allowing my hand to tremble slightly as I held the pen. What Patricia and Marcus didn't know was that I had a small recording device hidden in my house dress pocket, and Detective Williams was positioned outside with backup officers, waiting for my signal. I had also arranged for Mr. Richardson to be present as a witness to the attempted fraud. As I pretended to sign the first document, Patricia could barely contain her excitement. Now you don't have to worry about anything anymore, Mother Margaret. I'll take care of everything for you. Everything? I asked, continuing my confused elderly act. Everything, Patricia confirmed. The house, the money, all your jewelry and investments. You can just relax and let me handle all the difficult decisions. Marcus nodded approvingly as he watched me sign document after document. Mrs. Thornton, these papers mean that Patricia now has complete authority over your estate. She can sell property, move money between accounts, and make medical decisions on your behalf. Even the house? I asked quietly. Especially the house, Patricia said with barely disguised glee. This beautiful mansion will be properly managed, and if you ever need expensive medical care, we can sell it to pay for your treatment. As I finished signing the last document, Patricia actually clapped her hands together in celebration. There, that wasn't so difficult, was it? Now everything is properly arranged. Marcus began collecting the papers, clearly eager to leave, before anyone could discover what had transpired. But as he reached for the property transfer deed, I suddenly straightened in my chair and fixed him with a steady gaze that was entirely different from the confused expression I had been wearing. Actually, Mr. Caldwell, I think there might be a problem with those documents, I said in a clear, strong voice that caused both Patricia and Marcus to freeze in shock. Patricia's mouth fell open as she stared at me in disbelief. Mother Margaret, how are you? How am I suddenly not confused and disoriented? I finished for her. Because I've never had Alzheimer's disease, Patricia. I've been completely aware and mentally competent throughout these past 6 months while you've been systematically stealing from me and planning to defraud me of my entire estate. Marcus began stuffing papers back into his briefcase, clearly recognizing that their scheme had been exposed. I don't know what you're talking about, Mrs. Thornton. These are legitimate legal documents designed to protect your interests. I stood up from my chair with a steadiness that further shocked Patricia. Mr. Caldwell, you're a disbarred attorney who has been helping my daughter-in-law commit fraud. Those documents contain false medical information, and you've been paid to help Patricia steal millions of dollars from me. Patricia finally found her voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. This is impossible. You have dementia. Dr. Morrison diagnosed you. You can't remember anything from day to day. Dr. Morrison never diagnosed me with dementia, I corrected. He ran tests to rule out other conditions, but I carefully managed my responses during examinations to support the symptoms I was pretending to have. I've been acting, Patricia, and apparently, I'm quite good at it. The color drained from Patricia's face as the full implications of what I was saying sank in. You've been pretending? For 6 months? 6 months during which you stole over $50,000 from my accounts, used my credit cards for unauthorized purchases totaling another $30,000, stole jewelry worth approximately $20,000, and planned to defraud me of my entire $10 million estate. Marcus was backing toward the door, but I held up a hand to stop him. I wouldn't leave just yet, Mr. Caldwell. I think there are some people who would like to speak with both of you. I walked to the window and raised the shade, revealing Detective Williams and 2 uniformed officers approaching the front door. Patricia began hyperventilating as she realized the magnitude of her situation. "You can't do this to me," she gasped. "David will never believe you. He knows how confused you've been. He's seen your condition deteriorating." "David has seen exactly what I wanted him to see," I replied calmly. "And when he reviews the evidence I've gathered, including recordings of your phone conversations with Mr. Caldwell, documentation of every theft you've committed, and video footage of this attempted fraud, I believe he'll understand why I felt it necessary to expose your criminal behavior." The front doorbell rang, and I could hear Mrs. Henderson, who had returned early from her day off as planned, letting Detective Williams and her colleagues into the house. Within moments, they were in Harold's study, taking Patricia and Marcus into custody. Detective Williams looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Mrs. Thornton, that was incredibly brave, but also very dangerous. If they had suspected what you were doing, they might have escalated their plans, or worse," I acknowledged. "But I couldn't let them steal everything Harold and I worked for our entire lives. More importantly, I couldn't let them destroy David's inheritance through their greed." As Patricia was being handcuffed, she looked at me with a hatred I had never seen before. "You vindictive old witch. You've ruined everything. David will never forgive you for this. David will understand that I was protecting our family from a predator," I replied quietly. "Someone who married him, not for love, but because she saw him as a pathway to wealth she hadn't earned." Marcus remained silent during his arrest, clearly recognizing that anything he said could be used against him in court. Detective Williams assured me that they had enough evidence to charge both of them with multiple felonies, including elder fraud, identity theft, forgery, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny. After Patricia and Marcus were taken away, I called David to explain what had happened. The conversation was one of the most difficult of my life, as I had to tell my son that his wife of 15 years had been planning to steal his inheritance and had been systematically abusing me financially while pretending to care for me. David was devastated, not only by Patricia's betrayal, but also by the realization that I had felt it necessary to deceive him about my mental condition in order to protect our family's assets. He returned from his business trip immediately, and we spent hours discussing everything that had transpired over the previous 6 months. "I should have seen the signs," David said, his head in his hands as we sat in the living room where I had spent so many evenings pretending to be confused. "The way she talked about money, her interest in your financial affairs, even her reaction to your supposed dementia. It was all wrong. She's very good at manipulation, son," I told him gently. "She presented herself as the devoted daughter-in-law, sacrificing her own happiness to care for me. Even I might have been fooled if I hadn't discovered the initial thefts." The legal proceedings that followed were extensive and well-publicized in our community. Patricia ultimately pleaded guilty to multiple felony charges in exchange for a sentence of 12 years in prison and full restitution of all stolen funds and property. Marcus received a similar sentence and was permanently barred from any work related to legal services. During the trial, additional evidence emerged showing that Patricia had been planning the fraud scheme almost from the beginning of her marriage to David. She had researched methods for exploiting elderly people and had even consulted with other criminals about the best ways to gain control of a senior's assets. The prosecution described it as one of the most calculated cases of elder abuse they had ever encountered. The emotional toll on David was significant, and he struggled with feelings of guilt and betrayal for months after Patricia's arrest. He blamed himself for not recognizing her true nature and for allowing her access to my financial information. I spent considerable time reassuring him that Patricia was a skilled manipulator who had fooled many people, not just him. Mrs. Henderson, our loyal housekeeper, was deeply apologetic for not recognizing that I had been acting during those 6 months. "I should have known," she said tearfully. "You're the sharpest woman I've ever met. I can't believe I fell for that performance." "You fell for it because you care about me," I assured her. "Your concern and sadness during those months were genuine emotions that showed your loyalty to our family. Patricia exploited that goodness in you, just as she exploited David's love and trust." Dr. Morrison was equally surprised when he learned the truth about my condition. He admitted that he had been puzzled by some inconsistencies in my symptoms, but had attributed them to the unpredictable nature of dementia. The experience led him to develop new protocols for evaluating elderly patients who might be victims of abuse or exploitation. The aftermath of the fraud attempt had several unexpected consequences. Word of my elaborate deception spread throughout our community, and I received numerous visits from other elderly residents who suspected they might be victims of financial exploitation by family members or caregivers. I began working with Detective Williams and elder services organizations to help other seniors protect themselves from similar schemes. One particularly memorable case involved my neighbor, Mr. Fitzgerald, whose grandson had been gradually stealing from him while promising to help manage his finances. Using techniques similar to what I had employed, we were able to gather evidence and expose the grandson's theft, recovering most of Mr. Fitzgerald's stolen savings. David eventually began dating again, though he approached relationships with much more caution than he had previously. The experience with Patricia had taught him to look for warning signs of manipulation and to trust his instincts when something didn't feel right about a person's motivations. "I think I was so eager to find someone after my divorce from my first wife that I ignored red flags about Patricia," he confided to me one evening. "Her interest in our family's wealth should have been a concern from the beginning, but I interpreted it as her wanting security and stability." 6 months after Patricia's conviction, David met Elena, a widowed teacher who had no knowledge of our family's financial situation when they first began dating. Elena was everything Patricia wasn't: genuine, caring, and interested in David for who he was, rather than what he could provide. When I eventually told Elena the story of Patricia's fraud and my elaborate deception, she was amazed by what I had endured to protect my family. "You're the strongest woman I've ever met," Elena told me. "To maintain that performance for 6 months while watching someone steal from you and plan to destroy your family must have required incredible self-control." Elena's genuine admiration for what I had done was refreshing after months of people expressing concern about the risks I had taken. While I understood their worry, I knew I had made the right choice in exposing Patricia's criminal behavior before she could cause even more damage to our family. The house felt different after Patricia was gone. The oppressive atmosphere of deception and calculation was replaced by the peaceful environment Harold and I had always maintained. David and Elena married 2 years later, in a small ceremony in our garden, surrounded by friends and family who celebrated their genuine love and commitment. As I watched David dance with Elena at their wedding reception, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to that moment. The 6 months I spent pretending to have Alzheimer's disease had been among the most challenging of my life, but they had also revealed truths about the people around me that might never have been exposed otherwise. Patricia's betrayal had been devastating, not just because of the money she stole, but because of the way she exploited David's love and my trust. She had entered our family with the specific intention of enriching herself at our expense, viewing us as marks in a long-term con game rather than people deserving of respect and honest treatment. The experience also taught me valuable lessons about the vulnerability of elderly people in our society. I had been fortunate to discover Patricia's theft early and to have the mental acuity to devise a plan for exposing her. Many seniors facing similar exploitation might not have the resources or abilities to protect themselves, making them easy targets for unscrupulous family members, caregivers, or con artists. This realization motivated me to become more involved in advocacy for elderly rights and protection from financial abuse. I began speaking at community organizations and working with law enforcement agencies to educate people about the warning signs of elder exploitation. My story became a cautionary tale about the importance of maintaining control over one's financial affairs and being cautious about granting others access to sensitive information. Detective Williams often invited me to speak at training sessions for police officers and social workers who dealt with elder abuse cases. My first-hand experience of both being victimized and successfully fighting back provided valuable insights for professionals working to protect vulnerable seniors. Mrs. Thornton's case demonstrates that elder abuse can happen to anyone, regardless of their intelligence, education, or financial resources, Detective Williams would explain to her trainees. It also shows that seniors can be incredibly resourceful in protecting themselves when they have the right support and information. One of the most rewarding aspects of my advocacy work was connecting with other elderly people who had successfully exposed financial exploitation or fraud attempts. We formed an informal network of seniors who shared strategies for protecting assets and supporting each other through legal proceedings against abusive family members or caregivers. Mr. Richardson, my attorney, was instrumental in helping me establish a foundation dedicated to preventing elder financial abuse. We created educational programs, provided legal resources for seniors facing exploitation, and lobbied for stronger laws protecting elderly people from financial crimes. The Foundation's work expanded over the years to include training programs for financial institutions, helping them identify potential signs of elder abuse in their customers' accounts. Many banks now have protocols for flagging unusual account activity that might indicate an elderly customer is being exploited by someone they trust. My relationship with David grew stronger after Patricia's conviction, partly because we had shared the trauma of her betrayal, but also because the experience had taught us both valuable lessons about trust, family loyalty, and the importance of honest communication. David became much more involved in managing family financial affairs, not because he didn't trust me to handle them, but because he wanted to ensure that no one could ever again exploit our family's wealth. Elena brought a warmth and stability to David's life that had been missing during his marriage to Patricia. She was genuinely interested in our family history and spent many evenings listening to stories about Harold and the early years of our marriage. Her presence helped heal some of the emotional damage Patricia had caused with her calculating manipulation of our family relationships. 3 years after Patricia's imprisonment, David and Elena welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Margaret after me. Holding my granddaughter for the first time, I reflected on how different this moment would have been if Patricia's scheme had succeeded. Instead of celebrating new life and family continuity, we might have been dealing with the aftermath of financial ruin and family destruction. The legal ramifications of Patricia's crimes extended beyond her prison sentence. Civil litigation recovered most of the stolen funds and property, though some assets had been hidden or spent in ways that made recovery impossible. The experience taught me the importance of monitoring financial accounts regularly and maintaining strict controls over who has access to sensitive information. Marcus Caldwell's involvement in the scheme revealed a broader network of individuals who preyed on elderly people through fraudulent legal services. His arrest led to investigations that exposed several other cases of elder fraud, ultimately resulting in additional convictions and the recovery of hundreds of thousands of dollars stolen from senior citizens. The publicity surrounding our case also prompted legislative changes designed to better protect elderly people from financial exploitation. New laws required additional verification procedures for certain types of legal documents involving seniors and created harsher penalties for crimes targeting elderly victims. 5 years after Patricia's arrest, I received a letter from her in prison. She claimed to have found religion and wanted to apologize for what she had done to our family. The letter was filled with self-pity and attempts to justify her actions by claiming she had been desperate and made poor choices under pressure. I chose not to respond to Patricia's letter, sharing it instead with David so he could make his own decision about whether to engage with his former wife. David read the letter carefully, but ultimately decided that Patricia's apology was too little, too late, and likely motivated more by her desire for early parole than genuine remorse. She had 15 years to show genuine love and respect for our family, David told me. Instead, she spent that time planning to steal everything we had worked for. A letter from prison doesn't change what she did or who she really is. I agreed with David's assessment. Patricia's crimes hadn't been impulsive mistakes made under pressure. They had been calculated, long-term exploitation of people who had welcomed her into their family and trusted her with their most valuable possessions. As I approached my 80th birthday, I found myself reflecting more frequently on the lessons learned from my experience with Patricia's betrayal. The 6 months I spent pretending to have Alzheimer's disease had been among the most difficult of my life, but they had also demonstrated my own strength and resourcefulness in ways I hadn't expected. The deception had required me to suppress my natural personality and intelligence while carefully observing and documenting Patricia's criminal behavior. It had been emotionally exhausting to watch her celebrate what she believed was my mental decline, while planning to steal everything Harold and I had built together. But the experience had also revealed the depth of loyalty and love shown by people like Mrs. Henderson, Dr. Morrison, and ultimately David, even though he had been deceived by Patricia's manipulation. Their genuine concern for my welfare during those months had been a source of comfort, even as I maintained my deceptive performance. The success of my plan had depended on careful preparation, patience, and the willingness to take significant personal risks to protect my family's future. There had been moments when I wondered if I was making the right choice, particularly when I saw how much my apparent decline was hurting David. Looking back, however, I remain convinced that my deception was necessary and justified. Without concrete evidence of Patricia's criminal intentions, she might have succeeded in gaining legal control over my assets and ultimately stealing everything my family had worked generations to accumulate. The foundation I established has now helped hundreds of elderly people protect themselves from financial exploitation, and the educational programs we developed are used by law enforcement agencies and social service organizations across the region. My story has become a powerful tool for illustrating both the vulnerability of seniors and their potential for fighting back against those who would exploit them. David and Elena now have 3 children, and our family gatherings are filled with the laughter and joy that were missing during Patricia's presence in our lives. The mansion that Patricia tried to steal has been restored to its role as a gathering place for celebrations and family traditions, rather than a prize to be won through deception and fraud. Mrs. Henderson, now in her 70s herself, continues to work for our family part-time, more as a beloved friend than an employee. She often jokes about how convincingly I portrayed confusion and memory loss during those 6 months, though I know the experience was traumatic for her as someone who genuinely cared about my well-being. Dr. Morrison has incorporated lessons learned from my case into his practice, developing better protocols for identifying potential elder abuse and ensuring that patients have private opportunities to report concerns about family members or caregivers. He credits my experience with teaching him to look beyond obvious symptoms to consider the broader context of an elderly patient's situation. Detective Williams was promoted to captain of the White-Collar Crime Division, partly based on her successful handling of complex fraud cases like Patricia's. She remains a close friend and continues to consult with me on cases involving elder exploitation, valuing the perspective I gained from my experience as both victim and investigator. The legal precedents established through Patricia's prosecution have been used in dozens of subsequent cases involving elder fraud, helping prosecutors secure convictions and recover stolen assets for other families victimized by similar schemes. The comprehensive evidence we gathered during my 6-month deception became a model for how law enforcement agencies approach investigations of elder financial abuse. Mr. Richardson, now in his 80s, has updated his practice to include additional safeguards for elderly clients, including protocols for verifying that legal documents are being signed without coercion and procedures for detecting potential financial exploitation by family members. He often refers to my case as an example of why elderly people must maintain active oversight of their legal and financial affairs. As I sit in Harold's study today, the same room where Patricia and Marcus attempted their final fraud, I feel a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that justice was served and my family's legacy was protected. The 6 months I spent pretending to lose my mind were among the most challenging of my life, but they were also a testament to the lengths a person will go to protect their family from those who would exploit their trust and vulnerability. The photograph of Harold on my desk serves as a constant reminder of why I fought so hard to preserve what we built together. He would have been proud of how I handled Patricia's betrayal, though he probably would have worried about the risks I took during those months of deception. Harold always believed in facing problems head-on with intelligence and determination, qualities that served me well during my confrontation with Patricia's criminal scheme. My granddaughter Margaret, now 5 years old, often visits me in this study, asking questions about the books and papers scattered across Harold's old desk. She has no idea that this room was once the scene of an attempted theft that could have changed the course of our family's future. Instead, it remains what it has always been, a place where important family decisions are made and where our history is preserved for future generations. The daily routine I maintain now is remarkably similar to what it was before Patricia entered our lives. Though I am more cautious about who I trust with sensitive information, I continue to manage my own financial affairs with assistance from Mr. Richardson and a team of trusted advisors who understand the importance of protecting elderly clients from exploitation. Elena has become the daughter I never had, bringing warmth and genuine affection to our family that stands in stark contrast to Patricia's calculating manipulation. She often helps me with correspondence related to the foundation and has shown remarkable insight in developing new programs to help elderly people protect themselves from financial abuse. The irony of my situation is not lost on me. By pretending to lose my mental faculties, I was able to demonstrate just how sharp and resourceful I actually am. The months of careful observation, evidence gathering, and strategic planning required cognitive abilities that many people half my age would struggle to maintain under such stressful circumstances. My relationship with the local law enforcement community has evolved significantly since Patricia's arrest. I am frequently consulted on cases involving suspected elder abuse, and my experience has helped develop new investigative techniques for uncovering financial exploitation schemes. The police department has even created a special unit dedicated to crimes against elderly victims, partly inspired by the success of my case. The Foundation's work has expanded internationally, with organizations in other countries requesting information about our educational programs and investigative techniques. Elder abuse is a global problem that affects millions of seniors worldwide, and my story has become a symbol of hope for those who find themselves victimized by people they trusted. One particularly rewarding aspect of my advocacy work has been mentoring other elderly people who have successfully exposed financial exploitation. We meet monthly at the community center, sharing strategies and providing emotional support for those dealing with the aftermath of betrayal by family members or caregivers. Martha Henley, an 82-year-old woman whose nephew had been stealing her Social Security checks, credits our group with giving her the courage to report his crimes. "Mrs. Thornton showed us that we don't have to be victims," Martha often says. "We can fight back and protect ourselves, even when the people hurting us are our own family members." These connections with other survivors have enriched my life in ways I never expected. The bonds formed through shared experiences of betrayal and recovery have created a community of strong, resilient individuals who refuse to be defined by what others tried to do to them. The impact of my deception extended beyond just catching Patricia in her criminal acts. The detailed documentation I gathered during those 6 months provided law enforcement with insights into how financial exploitation schemes develop and evolve over time. This information has been used to train bank employees, social workers, and healthcare providers to recognize early warning signs of elder abuse. Dr. Morrison now includes questions about financial concerns as part of routine examinations for elderly patients, creating opportunities for seniors to report suspicious activity by family members or caregivers. Several cases of financial exploitation have been uncovered through these conversations, leading to criminal prosecutions and the recovery of stolen assets. The media attention surrounding my case initially made me uncomfortable, as I had never sought publicity for my actions. However, I came to understand that sharing my story could help protect other elderly people from similar exploitation. The interviews and articles about my experience reached thousands of seniors who might not have otherwise learned about the warning signs of financial abuse. Television appearances on news programs and talk shows allowed me to reach even broader audiences with information about protecting against elder fraud. These opportunities to educate people about financial safety for seniors became an unexpected but important part of my retirement years. The legal precedents established through Patricia's case have had lasting impacts on how courts handle elder abuse prosecutions. The comprehensive evidence-gathering techniques I employed during my deception have been incorporated into law enforcement training programs, helping investigators build stronger cases against those who exploit elderly victims. Judge Harrison, who presided over Patricia's sentencing, later told me that my case had influenced his approach to other elder abuse prosecutions. Your willingness to take such personal risks to gather evidence demonstrated the serious impact these crimes have on victims, he explained. It helped me understand that financial exploitation of seniors isn't just about money. It's about destroying people's sense of security and trust in their own families. The ripple effects of exposing Patricia's scheme continue to this day. Marcus Caldwell's conviction led to investigations of his other clients, resulting in additional prosecutions and the recovery of hundreds of thousands of dollars stolen from elderly victims. His disbarment was upheld on appeal, ensuring that he can never again use legal credentials to facilitate financial fraud. Patricia's former friends and associates were also investigated, revealing a network of individuals who shared information about vulnerable elderly targets and techniques for exploiting them. Several additional arrests were made, breaking up what investigators described as an organized conspiracy to commit elder fraud. The emotional healing from Patricia's betrayal took years for David to complete. He underwent counseling to deal with feelings of guilt and anger related to his wife's deception, gradually learning to trust his own judgment again. His relationship with Elena provided a healthy foundation for rebuilding his faith in genuine love and commitment. David's experience has made him an advocate for men who have been deceived by manipulative partners. He speaks at support groups and counseling sessions, helping other men recognize warning signs of manipulation and financial exploitation. His perspective as someone who was victimized alongside his mother has provided valuable insights for professionals working with families affected by elder abuse. The changes in David's approach to relationships have been profound and positive. He now values honesty and transparency above superficial attractions, and his marriage to Elena reflects a mature understanding of what constitutes a healthy partnership. Their children are growing up in an environment of genuine love and respect that stands in stark contrast to the calculating atmosphere Patricia created. Mrs. Henderson's loyalty during my months of pretending to have dementia remains one of the most touching aspects of the entire experience. Her genuine concern for my well-being, even when she believed I was losing my mental faculties, demonstrated the kind of character that made Patricia's coldness even more apparent by comparison. "I should have known you were too smart to develop dementia so quickly," Mrs. Henderson often jokes now. "But your performance was so convincing that even someone who has known you for 20 years believed it completely." Her willingness to participate in the final confrontation with Patricia, returning early from her day off to let Detective Williams into the house, showed her commitment to protecting our family from those who would exploit us. Mrs. Henderson has become not just an employee, but a trusted friend, whose loyalty was tested and proven during our most difficult time. The security measures I implemented throughout the house during my deception remain in place today, serving as ongoing protection against potential future threats. The recording devices and surveillance equipment that helped gather evidence against Patricia now provide peace of mind for someone living alone in a large house with valuable possessions. These security measures have proved their worth on several occasions when attempted burglaries or scam artists have targeted our property. The comprehensive documentation system I developed during my investigation of Patricia has become a model for how elderly people can protect themselves from various forms of exploitation and fraud. My daily routine now includes regular reviews of financial statements and security footage, maintaining the vigilance that served me so well during my confrontation with Patricia. This ongoing attention to potential threats has become second nature, though it is balanced with efforts to maintain the open, welcoming atmosphere that has always characterized our family home. The Foundation's educational programs have reached thousands of elderly people and their families, providing practical information about protecting assets and recognizing signs of financial exploitation. The workshops we conduct at senior centers and community organizations consistently receive positive feedback from participants who feel more confident about managing their financial security. One of our most successful initiatives has been the development of buddy systems that pair elderly people with trusted friends or family members who help monitor their financial affairs. These partnerships have prevented numerous cases of exploitation by creating additional layers of oversight and support for vulnerable seniors. The legal clinic we established provides free consultations for elderly people who suspect they are being financially exploited. Volunteer attorneys donate their time to review documents, investigate suspicious activities, and pursue legal action when necessary. This service has helped recover millions of dollars stolen from elderly victims throughout our region. My involvement in legislative advocacy has led to the passage of stronger laws protecting elderly people from financial crimes. The penalties for elder fraud have been increased significantly, and new requirements for monitoring and reporting suspicious activities have been implemented by financial institutions and healthcare providers. The testimony I provided before legislative committees was emotionally difficult but necessary to illustrate the real-world impact of elder abuse on victims and their families. Lawmakers needed to understand that these crimes cause devastating effects that extend far beyond financial losses, affecting people's sense of security, family relationships, and trust in others. The lobbying efforts also focused on improving resources for investigating and prosecuting elder abuse cases. Additional funding was allocated for specialized training programs and the creation of dedicated elder abuse units within law enforcement agencies. These improvements have led to significantly higher conviction rates and more effective recovery of stolen assets. International recognition of our foundation's work has led to speaking engagements and consulting opportunities around the world. The techniques we developed for uncovering financial exploitation have been adapted for use in different legal and cultural contexts, helping protect elderly people in diverse communities. A particularly memorable trip took me to a conference in London where I met with advocates from dozens of countries who were working to combat elder abuse in their own communities. The universality of the problem was sobering, but the dedication of people working to solve it was inspiring and energizing. These international connections have also led to research collaborations that are advancing our understanding of how financial exploitation schemes operate and evolve. The data we have collected through our programs is being used by researchers to develop better prevention strategies and more effective intervention techniques. The academic recognition of my experience has resulted in case studies being developed for use in criminology and social work programs. Students learning about elder abuse study my deception as an example of how victims can take active roles in protecting themselves and gathering evidence against their exploiters. Guest lectures at universities have provided opportunities to share my story with future social workers, law enforcement officers, and attorneys who will work with elderly clients. These educational interactions help ensure that the lessons learned from my experience will be passed on to new generations of professionals. The personal growth I experienced during and after my confrontation with Patricia has been unexpected and profound. The months of maintaining a deceptive performance while under tremendous stress revealed inner strengths I had not fully recognized before. The successful resolution of the crisis boosted my confidence in ways that continue to benefit me today. This increased self-assurance has enabled me to take on challenges and opportunities that I might have avoided in the past. The public speaking, media interviews, and advocacy work that followed my experience would have been intimidating before, but they now feel like natural extensions of my commitment to helping others avoid similar exploitation. The sense of purpose that emerged from turning my traumatic experience into something beneficial for others has given new meaning to my later years. Rather than simply enjoying a comfortable retirement, I have found ways to make meaningful contributions to protecting and empowering elderly people in our society. The friendships I have developed through my advocacy work have enriched my social life significantly. The connections with other survivors, law enforcement professionals, attorneys, and fellow advocates have created a network of relationships based on shared values and common goals. These relationships have also provided ongoing learning opportunities as I continue to refine my understanding of elder abuse prevention and intervention strategies. The dynamic nature of financial exploitation schemes requires constant adaptation of protective measures and educational approaches. The evolution of technology has created new opportunities for both elder abuse and elder protection. Online banking and digital financial management tools can provide greater security and monitoring capabilities, but they also create new vulnerabilities that seniors must understand and address. Working with technology experts, our foundation has developed educational programs that help elderly people safely use digital financial tools while avoiding online scams and fraud. These programs address the growing importance of cybersecurity awareness for seniors who are increasingly targeted by sophisticated online exploitation schemes. The balance between embracing helpful technology and maintaining security awareness has become a crucial aspect of modern elder protection. My own experience with surveillance and recording equipment during my deception gave me practical knowledge about how technology can be used to gather evidence and ensure safety. The memoir I am working on will provide a more detailed account of my experience and the lessons learned from it. The book is intended to serve as both an inspiration for other elderly people facing exploitation and a practical guide for recognizing and responding to financial abuse. Working with a publisher who specializes in books about aging and elder issues has been an interesting process that has required me to reflect deeply on the emotional and psychological aspects of my experience. The writing process has been therapeutic in many ways, helping me process feelings and insights that have developed over the years since Patricia's conviction. The proceeds from the book will support the Foundation's continued work, ensuring that the educational and advocacy programs we have developed can reach even more elderly people and their families. This legacy aspect of the project is particularly meaningful as I consider how to ensure the long-term sustainability of the work we have started. As I conclude this reflection on my experience with Patricia's betrayal and my response to it, I am struck by how much my life has changed since that Tuesday morning when I first discovered unauthorized withdrawals from my bank account. What began as a violation of trust and an attempt to steal my life's work became the catalyst for a new chapter focused on service and advocacy. The 6 months I spent pretending to have Alzheimer's disease tested every aspect of my character and abilities. The successful exposure of Patricia's criminal scheme validated my decision to take such extreme measures to protect my family and our legacy. But perhaps more importantly, the experience revealed capabilities and strengths that have continued to serve me well in the years since. The foundation we established has become a lasting tribute to the power of turning personal trauma into meaningful action that benefits others. The thousands of elderly people who have been helped by our programs represent a positive legacy that extends far beyond the recovery of my stolen assets or Patricia's punishment. My relationship with David and Elena, and my role as grandmother to their children, has been enriched by our shared experience of overcoming betrayal and rebuilding trust. The family we have created together is stronger and more resilient because we faced and defeated a serious threat to our well-being and security. The professional relationships I have developed with law enforcement, legal professionals, and fellow advocates have created a network of support and collaboration that continues to generate new ideas and approaches for protecting elderly people from exploitation. These connections represent a community of people committed to ensuring that what happened to me does not happen to others. The legislative and policy changes that resulted from our advocacy work will provide protections for future generations of elderly people, helping to prevent financial exploitation before it occurs, and ensuring more effective responses when crimes are committed. These systemic improvements represent perhaps the most significant long-term impact of my decision to fight back against Patricia's scheme. Looking ahead, I remain committed to the Foundation's work and to my ongoing role as an advocate for elderly rights and protection. The experience of being victimized and then successfully fighting back has given me a unique perspective and credibility that I feel obligated to use for the benefit of others. The story of my deception and its aftermath continues to evolve as new cases of elder abuse are uncovered and new protective measures are developed. My experience has become part of a larger narrative about the resilience and resourcefulness of elderly people who refuse to be passive victims of exploitation and fraud. As I sit here in Harold's study, surrounded by the memories and mementos of a life well lived, I feel profound gratitude for the opportunity to turn a potentially devastating betrayal into something positive and meaningful. The months I spent pretending to lose my mind ultimately demonstrated just how sharp and determined I really am, and that knowledge continues to guide and inspire me every day. The legacy of my confrontation with Patricia extends far beyond our family to touch the lives of countless other elderly people who have been empowered to protect themselves and fight back against those who would exploit them. That broader impact represents the true victory that emerged from what began as a simple discovery of unauthorized bank withdrawals on a Tuesday morning in late September.